The college football times, they are a-changing. Is it for better or worse?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I'll tell you about Gametime in just a minute. And Lord of mercy, I got to get this light changed. I'm in a hotel in Mobile, and it looks like, boy, this thing really gives me some bags under my eyes. Sorry if you have them, but I mean, I'm the face of the program, Jimmy. You're the hair, I'm the face. Jimmy, we decided that for today's show, we really are going to take a whole show to talk about just the state of college athletics. Jimmy is a former law-talking guy, a lawyer, and he will have some interesting perspective, and I will probably have some terrible perspective. So I combine those two, then maybe something good will come out of this. But Jimmy, just give us an overview, because a lot has happened in the last couple of days. And am I nuts to feel like the NCAA has just said, well, that's it for us. We're just going to have a settlement for about $2.7 billion. And there are a lot of parameters in this thing that I'm just not understanding. So help me out, bro.
I think the shame of it is that this story bores a lot of people, and I get it. It is a lot of boring details, and it doesn't affect people that just sit in front of their TVs on Saturday and enjoy college football. And so a lot of people aren't going to get into the details, and some people are going to dive deep into the details and know this story really well. But the fact of the matter is, everyone that's a fan of college football needs to know that the sport has been radically and forever changed this week. I'll give you an example. And I just read this a few minutes ago. I wish I could cite where I read it, but I've read so much stuff today in preparation for discussing this here on the show. But just a few years ago, Luke, the NCAA had a court case where they fought sharing $6,000 in benefits to an athlete, and fought it. Like, we're not going to share $6,000 with these amateur athletes. And this week, the NCAA agreed to share $2.7 billion in benefits to athletes. So that's how much.
It sounds like the worst contestant on Let's Make a Deal ever, right? Like, behind this curtain, you can share $6,000, or you can go behind this curtain and share $2.7 billion and a donkey.
So that's, to sum this up best that I can. What happened this week is a settlement agreement between the NCAA and all of its member institutions, and with multiple plaintiffs over 4 different lawsuits that have been consolidated for purposes of what we lawyers call a global settlement, which means this is a settlement that goes beyond the parameters of one plaintiff's complaint. I want people to keep in mind, this is not the NCAA sitting down and deciding we've got to do things differently, or the smart leadership of colleges and universities and presidents saying, hey, I've come up with a different system. No, this is a response by the schools to these lawsuits. The lawsuits forced this change. This was not the NCAA deciding to change. This was forced by the lawsuits. And they had to agree to this settlement, because if they didn't agree to the settlement and they just proceeded to trial, Luke, in these 4 different lawsuits, they could have been hit with a jury verdict. And they were told, by the way, by their own counsel, that they were likely to lose at trial. And if so, the verdict could be X amount. And that X amount could have been in the $6 to $8 billion range. And if that was the case, the NCAA would have literally had to have filed bankruptcy if that had happened. So this was an effort to stave off worst case scenario. And the end result is college football and basketball and all NCAA sports are now forever changed. The SEC, by the way, agreed and authorized this settlement as a conference about an hour before our show began taping. So the SEC is on board with this. I think every power conference is, and most of the Group of Five. Now, the Group of Five conferences, by the way, and non-Group of Five conferences, they're furious about this. They don't like it. They're agreeing to it because what choice do they have? But as we get into the weeds, you'll find that all of the money that's being paid is going to football and basketball players at the big schools. But the little schools are having to fund this too, and their athletes aren't getting any of this. But they're helping fund what's happening with the big schools. Why? Because they're member NCAA schools. All the members of the NCAA are having to pay as a result of this. But the money is going to football and men's basketball players at the power institutions, as we used to call the Power Five, now the Power Four. That's who's getting all this money. They're going to get, Luke, $22 million a year at each Power Four school, $22 million per year. An additional $4 million will be paid to pay athletes that were denied NIL and revenue sharing opportunities for the last 4 years. So former athletes are getting some. Current athletes will be paid going forward. That fends off any future lawsuits in this area. But the end result, Luke, as it relates to the University of Alabama, $30 million per year is being added to Alabama's budget. Now, nothing's being added to the revenue. $30 million in additional costs are now coming to Alabama's athletic department. In terms of how Alabama plans to deal with this, I'm as curious as anyone. I look forward to statements from Greg Byrne and the president in terms of, I think common sense says there's going to be a lot of cost cutting. There's also going to be a lot of cost increases, probably to fans. Only makes sense, right? Tickets up, Todd Pride up. I mean, and they're going to be cutting, maybe even cutting sports. Some sports.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I want to get to. First of all, I get why the schools that aren't in the Big Four, I'm going to call them the Big Four. Power Four sounds dumb. Power Five, I get.
We got used to saying Power Five.
So I'm going to say I get, honestly, why those players, and I assume Notre Dame would be considered
Correct.
that. Maybe they're loose tie into the ACC or whatever. But I get why they get the money. Because, see, if you have football and it's just, I don't know, Alcorn State against Mercer, we're not watching that. And that's not going to draw any NIL. But if Mercer plays Alabama, or if Alcorn State plays LSU, all of a sudden people will watch. And so they only get any eyeballs because of what the big schools bring to the table. I totally get that. What I guess because I am Alabama, I'd be I guess I'm not going to be mad because I think in the end, the Alabamas of the world are going to be fine. The Ohio State's going to be fine. But if you're a Minnesota or a Purdue, I wonder if this really starts to affect you because, I mean, no matter what if you increase the budget, I mean, they've got to come up with the money to, and I don't know that they can do that to compete.
Okay.
And
this
so
could really harm the schools that I would say are on the lower end of the Power Four, the lower end Power Four schools. They're going to really struggle to come up with this $30 million. This is what's going to happen at Southern Miss and UAB and South Alabama and Bowling Green. They don't have $30 million a year.
Let's talk about that.
They're just simply not going to do this. So really what this is going to ultimately do, a lot of things. But one it's definitely going to do is hasten the split between the truly big elite power programs and the rest of college football. That divide is now about to be official.
And we're about to talk about that some more after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, you like betting on college sports? You might want to hurry. Check out FanDuel. FanDuel.com, I'm telling you, you'll love it. Look, it's winner take all the time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on your spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every single playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook, of course. A couple of quick notes. First of all, yes, Jimmy and I are both wearing the same shirts that we had in the previous podcast. But this one's going out Friday, and I forgot to bring my shirt in from the car, so I don't have a shirt. And speaking of shirts, I was watching Goodfellas right before we did this, and the Billy Bat scene where Joe Pesci beats the ever-living dog crap out of him because he told him to go get his shine box came on. And then one of my favorite scenes in moviedom ever, when Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro and Ray Liotta come into Joe Pesci's mom's house. And a lot of that was ad-libbed. They wanted it to be like she was actually surprised, like she woke up in the middle of the night, like and her son comes home with friends. And that's spurred on one of the greatest talks about the painting she had, which is featured on this T-shirt, which I desperately want to get. So if somebody wants to buy it for me, it's got the old man. She painted the old man, and she got one dog going this way and one dog going that way, and the old guy's going, "Hey, what do you want from me?" And that is one of my favorite movie scenes of all time. It really is. But okay,
this show is quite unpredictable. I did not see that coming.
Well, that's what we're moving and shaking like the NCAA world. So give me a couple other things. You know, it's so funny that sometimes even when people are trying so hard to do what they think is right, they end up hurting themselves even more. I'm going to say a couple of things. First of all, because everybody wanted all of this, you know, we've got to get where we got to get it where women's sports are this and men's sports are that, and everybody gets to get a chance, and kids need money. All these kids need to get paid. Well, now that the kids are about to get paid and everything's going to be set up differently, the irony is a lot of those women's sports and smaller men's sports are probably going to go away. Now, I'm not going to be affected, but I do feel like it sucks that there are going to be some kids out there that miss their opportunities. And it also makes me think a little bit, and I'm not going on a political rant here at all, I promise you. And I know when people say that, you always say something political. No, I'm not. I'm just saying, like the Caitlin Clark thing. I know that recently one of the hostesses on The View said something like, you know, because she's pretty and privileged is the only reason people are watching her. And I was thinking, yeah, but y'all have been begging us to watch the WNBA, and now Caitlin Clark comes along, and Caitlin Clark is a good-looking woman. I mean, she's not Carol Alt. I'm dating myself, or Susan
Alt.
Carol Alt, remember that model?
Was she in Leave It to Beaver, or was she in the original Wizard of Oz? Carol
No,
Alt.
She's an old model, but still. Or
Have you purchased a Sports Illustrated since 1975?
How about Jennifer? Can I go with Jennifer Aniston? I like women.
Okay, Jennifer Aniston. Okay,
I like women my age or older.
now I understand it.
But anyway, so you know, she is attractive and she is good at basketball, and now we're watching it, and it's like, what y'all are going to do is make it where, okay, well, we won't watch it at all because of her, and then you'll be mad that we're not watching it. It's sort of the same thing. Like everybody was, we got to pay the players. We got to pay the players. Oh, wait a minute. Only football makes money, so only that sport will still be around, and maybe basketball. We done messed up. And that's what it feels like this is. We have screwed around and made it where we just might not have a lot of other sports. Now, Alabama softball may continue to be, I don't know. But I'm willing to bet that everybody loses some kind of sport. There's no doubt in my mind.
I think that's true. Now, a couple of things this settlement doesn't do. The settlement obviously provides annual revenue now for all the football players and men's basketball players, substantial revenue for football players and men's basketball players at all these big schools. So Alabama's football players and basketball players will make any more money. But this is what the settlement does not address. It does not address Title IX, as Luke is just referring to. And in terms of how Title IX is going to impact this and benefits that female athletes get, the lawyers in this case are kind of saying, we're as curious as everyone else. The courts are going to have to work that out in future cases. So obviously Alabama and other schools are going to try to be proactive as it relates to Title IX. But this settlement does not impact Title IX. There's no revenue. There's no monies coming for female athletes or the male athletes in other sports. So that's interesting. Here is also interesting. This is going to infuriate some people as well. This settlement does not address NIL money and the collectives that operate outside the universities. That is unaffected by all this and may continue in its present form, in addition to revenue sharing from the TV contracts. This revenue sharing just relates to TV contracts and courts leaning to the idea that all along the athletes should have been sharing in the money that was the enormous money being paid by the TV networks to air college football and college basketball on TV, the famous $1 billion a year contract CBS has with basketball, all the money that college football has paid. This is the court saying the athletes should have been sharing in this money all along. And that's what this is about. It's not about NIL. It's not about Title IX. Those things will have to be worked out later.
But, and again, that's why I kind of feel like, yeah, I guess in a way the players are winners, but I do feel like this is sort of cheapening their experience. Like part of, I mean, think about it. I know this is fair, and this is so get off my lawn, old man of me. But think about those guys, the Junction Boys, right? Think about what they went through, and think about how many of those dudes went on to be like badasses in whatever field they chose.
Successful in life.
Construction, law, doctor, football, whatever. They turned out to be badasses because those rough times helped make them into what they turned out to be. And now I feel like, I mean, look, this is going to have a massive trickle down. I mean, this is going to end up happening in high school before you know it. It kind of already is. We're already on the fringe of like football only factories when you think about IMG. I'm not putting IMG down. I'm pro IMG. I'm just saying that they can't even play. A lot of people don't know they can't play for a state championship. They can only play regular season games because they're not really in the Florida Athletic Association. So High School Athletic Association. But I think about how many people. It feels like there's nothing but losers a little bit. The fans are losers. The players, they get some money. So I guess, but again, I'm going to go back to this may hurt them more long-term.
Because it really turns them into now more than ever, football players and basketball players are majoring in their sport.
Correct.
And getting paid now with revenue sharing coming in addition to the NIL, in addition to the Alston payments, in addition to out-of-pocket expense. Now at major schools, players will be paid handsomely, virtually all of them. And the big stars will be making more money than a lot of the players in the pro sports like the NBA or the NHL. I mean, we've already seen, Luke, this year in basketball, players in the transfer portal making more money through NIL than they would had they gone to the NBA and been paid the minimum. The minimum pay in the NBA is $1.1 million a year. There are players in the portal being paid over $1.1 million to play for college.
There's no doubt. And then, you know, again, I go back to, I think about somebody like Ed O'Bannon, who really is the whole reason we didn't have the college basketball, college football EA sports games for a while. And yeah, I guess in the end, like 10, 15 years later, he turns out to be right, you know, and like we should have been getting, but I mean, it feels like at what cost? Because my 40s to my 50s were my formative years, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities to be an Alabama dynasty and be the coach, not Nick Saban.
You didn't get to grow up with EA Sports because you couldn't have it in your 40s and 50s.
Yeah. And then EA Sports, you know, I wish, you know, what would have been cool back when Ed O'Bannon first raised his hand and said, hey, this kind of isn't right. You're using my likeness and I should get paid for it. I wish EA, even if they had done it, you know, silently, if they had said, we're going to start putting a little bit of money aside, you know, every time we sell a game. And then if we ever come back, we're going to divvy out some of this stuff as soon as it's legal. You know,
they did not.
They did not do that because that would be a terrible business decision. But I wish they had done it.
Well, there's no question that what we're dealing with now with this massive news this week of the settlement of the cases and what it's going to mean to college sports, there's no doubt that because the NCAA didn't adapt to the changing times, even years ago, we should have been able to buy players' jerseys in the 60s and the 70s, much less 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because the NCAA wouldn't allow that sort of stuff. Now it's swung so far in the other direction that it blows people's minds. But here we are in a new day.
Jimmy, okay, I think it's a Hilton now, or maybe it's back to a Sheraton. I can't keep up. But there's a Sheraton on 280 by the old TGI Fridays where Perry's Steakhouse is now in Birmingham. That used to be the team hotel, if I remember right, for Alabama when they'd play. I know when they played in Birmingham, but I'm not sure if what they did in Tuscaloosa. I think they ended up leaving Tuscaloosa a lot of times, sometimes too. But regardless, okay, so we're about to play Penn State in 1986 in Tuscaloosa. And my parents and I stay in that Sheraton. And I'll go down to the gift shop, and it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And I didn't buy it because my dad didn't let me buy it. I didn't have any money of my own. But there was a sweater. And it had 97 with the Grim Reaper inside of it. And so it's Cornelius Bennett's number with the Grim Reaper, right? And I thought that was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And I wanted to buy it, and I couldn't. And I remember thinking back then when I was 14, like, I wonder if he gets money from this. And I didn't ask anybody, but like maybe I'm having a revisionist history. But I remember that. And see, he should have gotten money from that.
No doubt.
I'm fine with that. But I go back to, all these people, I listen to a lot of college football talk. All these guys on all these Sirius XM shows always go, man, we hate it when the SEC has cupcake weekend. We hate it when Alabama plays McNeese State and LSU plays, Louisiana Tech or whatever. Well, guess what? You're about to not get that anymore because guess what? Those schools won't be fielding a team because they can't afford to. And
we're certainly not a team in the same level or able to play the same schools anymore, a complete split. I think that's coming.
And I'd be willing to bet that it'll probably be illegal for teams like Alabama and LSU to play those teams because it'd be like somebody in the NFL playing somebody from the USFL. We're going to talk about it more in just a second. But I got to tell you about Gametime. I love me some Gametime. And speaking of NFL games, speaking of NBA, college baseball, college football, I bought my college baseball tickets. I hadn't been to an Alabama baseball game in God knows how long. I bought me 2 college baseball tickets. I took my son to watch Alabama beat LSU the other day. It was awesome. Loved it. You need to go to Gametime, download that app, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You will love this app. You can see where your seats are going to be. They have a guarantee, lowest price guarantee. I promise you, you will love, love, love Gametime. And it's so easy. A Luke can do it. I've got it on my phone. That's how easy it is. My phone has applications on it, and Gametime is one of those applications. Did y'all know app is short for applications? So yes, I use that. Go to Gametime, use code LOCKEDONCollege, and thank me later. So yeah, that's what's about to happen. Is they're going to look, and I think this is also a very creative way for guys like Greg Sankey, who probably have the foresight for this. And maybe I'm giving him too much credit, or maybe I'm thinking he's more nefarious than he is. But see, I can see a squeeze play coming for somebody like a Vanderbilt, maybe somebody even like a Mississippi State ultimately. And again, I'm not making fun of those programs. I'm just saying, like, if football is the only thing that drives the train, and we all announce that now. It used to be, well, all sports are equal in there, blah, blah. No. Football is it. If that's the case, what does Vandy bring into the table? And if academics are becoming less and less of a factor, which they clearly are, really what does Vanderbilt bring into the table? And, this may be something where we get down to like 40 teams or something like that. I could see college football being 2 20-team leagues like the AFC and the NFC. And, all of a sudden you don't have any more Vandys and you don't have any more Mississippi States,
The settlement
I'm not saying that's right.
The settlement is an opt-in. Yeah, the settlement is an opt-in, opt-out situation, which means Alabama's certainly going to opt in. They haven't announced that, but Alabama's going to opt in almost certainly. What that means is Alabama's agreeing to pay the $22 million a year to current athletes, the $4 million a year to former athletes, and then using the additional money to fund. By the way, additional scholarships are coming. Football is probably increasing its scholarship number as a result of this. Baseball scholarship numbers may go up as a result of all the payment, up to $30 million. As part of this settlement, teams will now no longer be constrained in terms of scholarship numbers. That's one of the complaints, that schools arbitrarily say, hey, you can't come here on football scholarship, we're full, when maybe that's a violation of schools' rights to say, hey, we can pay for more scholarships, come on in. So there's going to be more football scholarships that might eliminate walk-ons. That's a very possible thing. That could be bigger football rosters than 85, but everyone's on scholarship. And how does that affect Title IX? But schools will either opt in or opt out. So to Luke's point about how Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, some schools like that may choose to opt out and say, you know what, we're not going to pay our players $22 million a year of this money. And if so, it's hard to imagine them remaining competitive at all in the SEC, because kids are only going to sign with schools that are sharing their TV revenue in terms of, if that's the choices. Hey, do I play at Mississippi State and make very little money, or do I play for Alabama, make a ton of money? I'm gonna choose Alabama, and so a lot of change is coming as a result of this settlement, and I can't emphasize enough that of all the changes, transfer portal, NIL, this week's is the biggest. This week's is the biggest because it completely and forever eliminates the idea that these guys are amateurs. They are officially professional athletes now. If you are a football or a men's basketball player at a major school, you are a professional athlete, no different than a Philadelphia Philly, a Philadelphia Eagle, or a Philadelphia Flyer, or a Dallas Cowboy. You are a professional athlete now per any definition. The amateurism died this week, and it really hadn't been officially alive for a while, but it is more than verified. There's a time of death, is May 23rd, 2024. Amateurism's done.
And I mean, tell me again, there'll be some people out there that say, well, what I'm about to say is anti-American, anti-capitalist. It's against the spirit, or I just don't like it because I'm an old man or whatever. But tell me how this is good, Jimmy. Tell me how any business can run like this, where you have unlimited scholarships, which it sounds like you might be going to, or seemingly unlimited. You have unlimited transfers for anybody whenever they want to transfer, wherever they want to go. And they can make unlimited funds, literally. Like there's no cap on what anybody can do. And so one team could pay $1 gazillion to everybody and never lose again. And boy, I just tell me how this is, and let's all remember, a lot of this was done in the name of parity. Everybody's been screaming about more parity, which I've sort of been against because, I mean, who the heck wants to watch a bunch of 7-7 teams? You know what I mean? I don't. I want to see some dominant teams and some bad teams. That's how it works. And some teams in the middle. And we're doing all these things in the name of parity. And as always, just like Nick Saban used to find ways around NCAA rules that they would come up to hurt him because he's 3 steps ahead. The programs like Alabama and Ohio State and LSU are going to be fine because they're already 3 steps ahead of what everybody else is thinking. A team like a Vanderbilt or like a Mississippi State or like a Purdue may be sitting back and going, okay, well, at least we're still in the Big Four now. But guess what? You've gone from being sort of a middle fish in the college football world to the worst kind of small fish. You're just chum in now a much smaller pond. And I don't know. This whole thing is moving so fast. It's frightening to me as a guy who does a podcast talking about college sports.
It settles the settlement. What everybody needs to take away from this is this does settle a few issues, and it resolves a few issues that needed to be resolved. But it does not resolve all of the issues by any means. A lot of that is still to come, and we're sort of at a breaking point of where you can add more money here in terms of, like I said, Alabama is now spending $30 million more dollars, as is every other power school, and with no additional streams. That didn't change this week. No, what's paid out has changed, but not what comes in. So. Now there will be new TV contracts in the future, and there was a deal this week about TNT is gonna show some of the playoff in a contractual agreement with ESPN. And I tell you what, if college football, college sports changes dramatically now each week, and still several things have to be resolved. Like Luke was saying, I think the current combination of how NIL works with the collectives and the transfer portal together is not sustainable, and it's not addressed at all by this settlement. And that's what needs to be addressed next, because that's a true albatross to the sport.
And we can't go off on it because we're almost at our 30-minute mark, but it just struck me that I would say the two sports that are most dependent and whose foundation is built upon tradition would be Major League Baseball and college football, to me. Like for the longest time. And then it seems like Major League Baseball sort of lost their way with all their tradition. The Pete Rose thing happens. Then, people are like, well, if Pete Rose isn't in, why would Barry Bonds or why would Mark McGwire or why would any of these other guys get in? Why do they get to keep playing, or why do they get to keep being recognized when they were doing things much more illegally? And it just created all this stuff, and it feels like baseball's tradition is sort of on its ear, and it's just not the same sport. And I worry about that with college football. Like, all these rivalries are going away. There's no more bedlam. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of funky. At first I was kind of for it. Now I'm really kind of sad. I mean, in these last couple of months or years I have left, I don't know. I'm sort of morbid today.
You and all the Carol Alt fans are dying off.
Well, I got to look up Carol Alt and see how old she is. She was a fox.
Probably younger than us, frankly.
I'll tell a quick story. So, this is how you knew that I was going through puberty. So, like, the old Eastdale Mall in Montgomery, that was like the thing to do when I was young. Like, we'd get a trip to Montgomery from Alex City and go to Eastdale Mall, and you'd always go to Spencer Gifts, and you'd wait for nobody to be looking. Then you'd flip through those posters that had the well-endowed women and all this thing. And my mom gave me some money. Said, "Yeah." I said, "I want a poster from her," and she said, "No problem." And because I had a poster of World Be Free up in my room. No kidding. That's how much I love basketball back then. But I bought a poster of a woman facing away from the poster. And she barely had anything on, and she just had like one of those signs like you see on a bridge, like a yield sign, just said "slippery when wet." And I put it on my wall, and my mom never went downstairs to I would always clean my own room.
She didn't see what you got with your.
She didn't see it for like 3 months, and she comes upstairs. She's like, "What is on your wall?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's been down there so long, I forgot that you would be surprised when you saw it. So now I'm unprepared how to react."
Wasn't Slippery When Wet? That was just the cover to the Bon Jovi album, wasn't it?
It was, but this was this was much trashier than that one.
Because that's what the cover of the Bon Jovi album was.
This was trashy. Trust me, this was a knockoff. It probably was still slippery, or wet. But anyway, all right, let's go.
Your mom know you well. You still have this poster, don't you?
Listen, I can neither confirm nor deny. Anyway, we will talk again next time. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.